Cars Channel News and Review Car.
(2018) GMC Terrain. The GMC Terrain hit the market in 2010 as GMC's smallest SUV, but because of its odd size, it lingered between the compact and midsize segments, often being called a tweener by some. It soldiered on for 6 years without any change until 2016 when GMC did a mild update. Even then, it wasn't up to competing well, and common complaints included that it was inferior in terms of technology and design. So, to remain relevant, GMC had to start working on the next-gen model, and it finally debuted at the 2017 Detroit Auto Show as a 2018 model. With the new generation comes a sleeker and stylish exterior design that leaves the SUV's old, boxy nature in the past. It gets some new technology that includes LED daytime running lights, HID headlamps on some trim levels, and an updated infotainment system that finally brings it into the modern ages. Under the hood, you'll find the option of 3 different turbocharged 4-bangers, one of which is a diesel and a pair of all-new 9-speed automatic transmission. But, more importantly, it rides on GM's new D2XX architecture, which should mean a lower curb weight and a stronger framework. Speaking of framework, that D2XX platform is the same architecture that underpins models like the Chevy Bolt, Chevy Cruze, 2018 Chevy Equinox, and even the Buick Envision. That's right, these days buying an SUV means you get the same basic framework that is found in cars. As rumors suggested prior to its debut, the option of a V6 engine dies off with the current generation, but those turbocharged 4-bangers should offer superior fuel economy. But, this new gen model brings a lot more to the table than we can talk about here, so take a virtual walk with me, and we'll go into the finer details before this baby hits showrooms. Was sitting in the crowd at Detroit when GMC finally let us see the new Terrain, shown in the top images, for the first time. Right away, I knew the GMC had finally learned that the boxy look that plagued models a few years ago was horribly outdated. Gone are the wide, square wheel arches, ugly exterior lights, and square grille. The old model, shown in the bottom images above, was hardly geometrically sound, and here we are looking at the Terrain the way it should have been designed in the first place. Everything is new up front, starting with the hood that is now angled more downward in the front and features a number of curved lines to add a muscular look. The real muscle, however, comes in the form of those sharp and raised lines that define the outside edges of the hood. That hood sits flush with the upper edge of the grille, which happens to feature a chrome surround and 3 chrome louvers that help emphasize its overall sport nature. Flanking the grille is a new pair of headlights that are a wild departure from the current model, featuring a C-shape of sorts with a single projector in the middle that is surrounded by an LED strip meant to serve as the daytime running lights. The headlights overlap onto the front fenders just a bit, providing ample room for integrated side markers within the same lens. Down below, GMC refrained from using the massive, fake vent designs that are plaguing a lot of new cars and went with smaller cutouts that are just a little bigger than the fog lights they support. A chrome stripe runs between each of the cutouts, juking upward to follow the upper lines of the air dam. That air dam, by the way, is new for the Terrain and replaces that weird little slot used on the front fascia of the outgoing model. Moving over to the sides, there's plenty of refreshing change. For starters, those big, ugly, and square wheel arches are gone and are not more integrated into the body for a sleeker and more refined look. A single sharp body line connects the headlights to the taillights, while the low portion of the doors are smooth like we saw on the outgoing model. The side skirt trim does have a little character, however, so there is a little something going on down there. The most important aspect of the side profile is the belt line, which is now staggered and gets progressively higher as you move closer to the rear. This does 2 things for the overall look. For one, it provides a much better, but more importantly, it leads the way to a unique look for the rear quarter glass. See, That rear quarter glass is much smaller in height, but significantly longer, extending all the way to the glass of the rear door. It also blends in nicely with the rear hatch, giving the appearance that the rear quarter glass wraps all the way around the rear, at least at a quick glance, anyway. The rear glass of the hatch is actually shorter than the outgoing model, which is something that you would think hampers rear visibility, but it's just the right size to provide a clear view behind you. The tail lamps are a major departure, taking a shape similar to that of the headlights and featuring a similar C-shaped LED strip that functions as a tail light. The hatch does serve as a home for a small lens that includes the reverse lights, but GMC refrained from linking them together with a big, dumb chrome strip. Instead, the GMC emblem is now a bit larger, brighter, and is mounted directly to the rear hatch. Meanwhile, the license plate recess now gets a chrome stripe above it that's less gaudy. The rear fascia isn't quite as tall on the new model, and GMC decided to lengthen those rear reflectors, curve them, and move them to the outside corners, a much better look. The exhaust outlets look like they have carried over unchanged, but they are actually a bit smaller, something that is allowed thanks to the new, smaller drivetrain options that we'll discuss a little later on. One other thing that is important to note is that the GMC Terrain is actually a little bit smaller now, and sits firmly in the compact segment. And, if you look at the side profile, you can see that the roof now has a downward slant in the rear, which is something most automakers are doing these days, but also features longer roof racks that make use of the full length of the roof. This means that there is the potential to carry more cargo on top compared to the outgoing model, which is great considering it's smaller than the outgoing model. With GMC being a semi-luxury brand, falling inferior to Cadillac but is still nicer than your everyday Chevy, we have to think a little bit outside of the box in terms of what it really competes with. Pitting it against compact offerings from Audi or BMW wouldn't be fair, as they are significantly more expensive, while other options from brands like Ford or Honda are significantly inferior in terms of pricing, comfort, and amenities. But, there are two models that do float the bill if you're cross-shopping, and that's the Acura RDX and the Lincoln MKC. They start out a few grand higher on the pricing scale but fit in well in most other areas, so let's see what they offer as far as exterior design goes. Lincoln nearly found itself laid out on the guillotine during the financial crisis of the mid-2000s but managed to pull through and reinvent itself at the same time. One such fruit of that survival is the MKC, which came to the market for the 2015 model year. With only a couple of years on the market, the MKC has yet to see its first refresh, but its design is still worthy of competing with the new Terrain. Where the Terrain has a single-framed grille, the MKC uses a dual grille that resembles a pair of angel wings. The fog lights are LED in nature but are oriented horizontally within the fake corner vents in the front fascia. The lower portion of the front end has a bubbly look, but the hood is as muscular and defined as that of the Terrain, while the side profile is quite similar with the exception of the waistline, which isn't jagged like that of the Terrain. The roof racks on the MKC don't elevate off of the roof as much, which is better for aerodynamics but makes securing cargo a little more difficult. Around back, the MKC has an oddly shaped hatch that's wider at the bottom than at the top. The taillights are mounted to the rear hatch only and have a wing look similar to that of the front grille. The exhaust outlets are integrated into the rear fascia for a cleaner look, and there's a skid plate, something the Terrain doesn't have.